Hello, I'm LegenTerry, and this endearing little indie is Planet of Lana, developed by WIshfully and published by Thunderful Group. Planet of Lana is a cinematic platformer slash puzzle game. I know that cinematic platformer isn't really a term that gets thrown around a lot, but if you've ever played a game like Limbo, Inside, or the more recent Somerville, you'd be in the right vein. If you're a bit older, you might be more familiar with Eric Chahi's Heart of Darkness or Another World. Anyways, the point is that it's a side-scrolling adventure filled with puzzling encounters, where the merging of beautiful alien landscapes and a general feeling of uneasiness give the game its backbone. The narrative is told mostly through a show-don't-tell approach, as the entire cast of characters speak an alien language that isn't subtitled. But they made it pretty easy to follow as long as you're paying attention, so let's talk about it. Lana is a playful young girl living in a primitive coastal village alongside her sister Elo. They chase one another through the pathways of the village and out into the wilderness, where they share a somber moment of reflection over what's assumed to be their parents' gravestones. As they venture further into the woods, they start taking notice of massive objects trailing through the sky. Lana catches up to her sister, who's begun watching the skies from a cliff that peeks over their home. One of these objects falls close to the pair and shows itself to be a massive spider-like robotic ship. It captures Elo and flies off in the direction of their village. Lana chases it back home just in time to witness the rest of her people being kidnapped and carried off, narrowly escaping capture herself. Eventually, she follows the ships to a place where the local wildlife is also being threatened. The robots have laid traps to capture them, and Lana watches as a tiny dark creature that looks like a cross between a cat and a monkey stumbles into one. She climbs down to the controls and frees it, and the newly formed duo begin to rely on each other to evade their captors. After reaching safety, the little creature is named Mui, and it joins Lana on her journey to break her sister and friends out of the clutches of the invaders. It's a pretty simple premise that evokes sci-fi classics like War of the Worlds, while putting its own heartfelt spin on things. The story balances elements like the struggle between nature and machinery, and the importance of preserving life, but it plays on these themes very subtly. It never feels like it gets preachy or in your face, mostly due to the way that the story is told through its visual language rather than a spoken one. This, along with some stuff we'll get into later, are the main exhibits in Planet of Lana. A quick glance tells the audience that the game revolves almost entirely around giving them stunning illustrations and breathtaking views to behold. It maintains a very painterly and picturesque look that draws inspiration from places like Studio Ghibli films. Ghibli films? How do you guys pronounce that? Because I always grew up saying Ghibli, but now everybody seems to switch to... You know what? It's not important. You get the gist. Bright colors, idyllic landscapes, and lush vegetation. All of the characters and 3D models are given hard cel-shaded lighting that really makes everything pop off the screen. Kinda like these like and subscribe buttons. Huh, wonder who put those there. It has these conflicting forces that brush up against the beauty of the natural environment. Mechanical constructions, robotic designs, and creepy monsters with inky black silhouettes and cold white eyes. There's underlying tones of horror and the exploration of ruins of a civilization past that leads our protagonist along by the nose to her destination. It runs very closely in parallel with the similar games of its genre that I mentioned earlier, only with less muted colors and a more amiable narrative. Lead artist Adam Strangelgis and his team have done some fantastic work here. Now, the second pillar of Planet of Lana is the music, and by God, does it have music. It's composed by Takeshi Furukawa, who, fittingly enough, saw a screenshot of Adam's work on the project and personally reached out via email to ask about writing music for it. Having formerly worked on things like Star Wars The Clone Wars, Avatar The Last Airbender, and 2016 Sony exclusive The Last Guardian, hiring him for the job was a no-brainer. Like, just imagine being an ambitious writer shopping around your first script, and you get a call from Steven Spielberg saying that he's a big fan and wants to direct it. Like, holy shit, what are the chances? Furukawa brings a mountainous layer of atmosphere and depth to the game with his music. The whimsical, adventurous moments, and the darker, more unnerving ones get exactly where they need to be on the sound spectrum. Running away from the spindly-legged invaders felt appropriately tense as you try to hide beneath whatever shelter you could find, with cellos and bass trombones humming in your ear and the steady pounding of bass drum urging you forwards. The audio team also did a fine job of making the world feel grounded. All of the sounds of life and the contrasting beeps and whirs of machinery bounce off of one another to create a soundscape that is very dynamic. Some of the more prevalent moments in the game use audio cues and music to clue you into things happening in the background of the story. Even if you aren't aware of it at the start, you'll become very familiar with a few sounds and musical notes that are found repeated until the end. Where the visuals and audio are immaculate, the way that Lana moves and feels to control are a little bit underwhelming. To start, there is no combat in this game, only running, hiding, and puzzle solving. Perfectly fine, I expected that. When it comes to speed, Lana runs about as fast as a highly motivated turtle. She can't jump very far, and the only other things she can do are crouch walk and hang from ledges. Later, she'll find more ways to interact with the world at large to make the gameplay more interesting, but these take a while to introduce and are a bit single note. The intent was probably to make you feel more vulnerable, which it does, but it also isn't very fun to slog your way slowly from point to point. If we're being honest, pretty big chunks of the game feel closer to a walking simulator than anything, and that's not a dig at walking simulator style games. All genres have their own audience in place, but Planet of Lana asks you to hold right on the stick for some extremely long durations. Like, I'm talking minutes of uninterrupted jaunts across the screen as the game takes time to show you cool set piece locations or to play you an emotional song. I feel like I could have used a little bit less of this, or maybe the developers could have found a slightly more creative way to deliver the same mood, but whatever, I guess that's more of a personal preference than a problem with the game. There are, however, a few problems with the game, a few bugs, and no, not those bugs. One of these is an unintended interaction with ledges where Lana almost clears the jump but doesn't quite get there. So she extends her arms like she wants to grab it, but then bumps the ledge with her legs or her stomach and careens off into the pit below. This is exacerbated by her momentum being really weighty, where she needs to get a short running start before making some jumps. I found another one where I was attempting to tell Mui to do something while walking away from a control station, and the game didn't realize that I'd walked away, leaving Lana sliding across the ground in the wrong pose. The last one I saw kind of let me skip a whole puzzle, which I didn't mean to do. I was sticking to the left-hand side of the screen, just trying to scope out where one of the robots was patrolling. I went across to the right and tried moving backwards because I thought I put myself in danger. I think the enemy's AI or pathfinding broke trying to track my movements, leaving the enemy on the right to hover helplessly in the air above my exit. I slipped away underneath it completely unnoticed, unharmed, and away from Mui, who I was supposed to have with me before the final cutscene played. Cutscenes are another thing that get a little bit weird on the technical side. It feels like the game should be able to pull off seamless cutscene integration, but there's always a short fade to black shift between the gameplay and the cutscenes that really breaks you out of the immersion. And it's not like they're changing the camera's perspective or introducing new elements that need time to load in, it's just there. Kind of hope that they work these out in a future patch for new players because it would be a much smoother experience overall without them. Planet of Lana clocks in at just under 5 hours for a casual playthrough, though I've read it can take up to 8 if you're searching for all 10 of the hidden shrine tablets. They give you a bit of lore about the game's world, which won't be the most revelatory thing if you paid attention to what's happening in the story. They might give you a secret ending, but a certain other game filled with shrines is currently clogging up Google's searchability, so I guess you'll just have to find out for yourself if you really want to. I was really only interested in seeing the game through to the end, so I found 3 of them easily and didn't go out of my way for the extras. 5 to 8 hours felt perfectly reasonable for a game of this scope, and it didn't overstay its welcome by any stretch of the imagination. If I were calling the shots, I probably would have liked to see a bit more diversity in its puzzle mechanics, or a few more action sequences, rather than long periods of meditative calmness to fill out the hours. Planet of Lana was a mesmerizing ride through a collection of big ideas condensed into a small, heartfelt package that left me with a smile. It's not perfect, but it manages to do exactly what it set out to do with style and grace. If you're at all curious about this game, it's probably right for you. Planet of Lana receives an 8 out of 10.